My fiancé insisted the wedding was cancelled unless I signed my house, car, and savings over to him. I stayed quiet, changed the locks, gave away his suit. He realized it all when another man arrived wearing it. "Marry me," he'd said, and I'd poured my heart into planning our future. But then, just 3 months before our wedding, Elias looked at me and said, "The wedding's off unless you put the condo, the car, and your savings in my name." My fiancé, the man I loved, was holding my life's work hostage. What would you do when the person you trust most reveals they're actually a wolf in sheep's clothing? He said it so casually, like we were debating dinner, not dismantling my entire future. My voice somehow stayed steady. "Let me think about it." But inside something had shattered. That man, Elias, sitting there so calmly in my home office, the office in my condo bought years before he ever entered my life, had just turned our upcoming wedding into a cold, calculated hostage negotiation. We were barely 3 months out and I'd already sunk $35,000 in deposits. The shock was immense, but it was quickly replaced by a glacial calm. What he didn't know was that I wasn't just thinking. I was already plotting. By the time he showed up for his custom suit fitting next week, a complete stranger would be wearing his $5,000 tailored jacket, and I'd be watching the whole spectacle from my car just across the street. But to truly understand that moment, we need to rewind. We need to talk about who I was before Elias Vance walked in and mistook my hard-earned success for his personal piggy bank. So who am I? My name is Aubrey Thorne. I'm 33, a corporate real estate attorney right here in Denver. That condo Elias wanted his name on? I bought it at 27. It took 3 years of brutal associate work at a firm where some old-school guys didn't think women belonged in commercial real estate. Every penny was mine. And the luxury SUV he demanded? Paid cash at 31. $38,000, saved specifically so I'd never have debt, never have payments, never give anyone leverage over something I needed. And that 6-figure savings account he wanted access to? That took a decade to build. It represents every vacation I skipped, every dinner out I said no to, every weekend I worked while my friends were living their lives. Every single dollar in that account had a story. It was a choice. Security over spontaneity. I learned about financial independence from my mother, but not in the way you usually learn from parents. I learned it by watching what happens when you don't have it. My mom passed away when I was 25, just before I passed the bar. Ovarian cancer. Fast, brutal, no mercy. In those final weeks, knowing she wasn't leaving the hospital, she grabbed my hand. "Aubrey," she whispered, her voice frail, "wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep, what you protect. Never let anyone make you feel guilty for building something solid. And never give anyone else control over what you've built." She was talking about my father, of course, though she didn't say his name. He left when I was 12. And when he walked out, Mom discovered she had nothing in her own name. No credit cards, no savings account that wasn't joint. No property. At 42, she had to start completely from scratch. She rebuilt herself, got her real estate license, worked 2 jobs for years, eventually found success. But she never forgot those early years of dependence. The vulnerability. The powerlessness. That sick, gut-wrenching feeling of trusting someone with everything only for them to leave you with nothing. So when I bought my condo at 27, I was honoring her. The market dipped just enough. I emptied my savings, took on a mortgage that terrified me. My colleagues thought I was reckless. "Rent a few more years," they said. "Build more cushion." But Mom's voice was in my head, loud and clear. I knew what I had to do. For the next 4 years, I lived like a college student in a beautiful space. IKEA furniture, no vacations, cooking at home every night, driving an old beat-up sedan I'd bought with cash from my first law firm bonus. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund went straight to that mortgage principal. My best friend, Chloe, watched all of this with a mix of admiration and genuine concern. We'd met in law school, 2 of only a handful of women in our corporate law program, and stayed tight even as our careers took different paths. She went into public interest law, made a fraction of what I did, but seemed perfectly happy sharing an apartment with a roommate and 2 cats. "Aubrey," she'd say during our Sunday trail runs, "you're 30 and haven't left Colorado in 4 years. You're missing your life." I just shake my head. "No, Chloe. I'm building my life. There's a difference." When I made that final mortgage payment at 31, I sat alone in my condo and just cried. Tears of relief. Tears of freedom. The kind of tears that hit you when you realize you've actually accomplished something you weren't sure was possible. That condo, it was mine. Completely. Totally mine. Every tile, every window, every single square foot belonged to me because I had earned it. Then I bought that SUV. 3 years old, but I paid the full $38,000 in cash. Chloe thought I was insane. Just finance it. Interest rates are low. But I didn't want payments. I didn't want debt. I needed to know that if everything else crumbled, I had a home and a vehicle no one could touch. By 32, I had that six-figure savings account and was on partner track at one of Denver's most prestigious commercial real estate firms. I was negotiating multi-million-dollar leases, navigating every complex zoning regulation in the county. Senior partners called me for advice. Clients requested me specifically. But despite all that, I was lonely. Deeply lonely in a way I never admitted to anyone. I'd come home every night to that beautiful empty condo and wonder if I'd made the wrong choices. All my college friends were married, engaged, posting picture-perfect lives. I had property, professional respect, financial security, but no one to share it with. That's where I was when I met Elias Vance 18 months ago at a charity gala for legal aid. He was 35, charming, and worked in what he vaguely called finance consulting, which I later learned meant advising startups on funding, though none of them ever seemed to actually get funded. But in those first few months, everything felt effortless. He'd bring coffee to my office during late nights. He'd listen intently when I talked about difficult cases. He seemed genuinely impressed by my career, by what I'd built, by the fact I owned property at 33. He made me feel like someone finally saw the work behind the success. Chloe, though, was skeptical from day one. She'd corner me at brunch. "Aubrey, there's something performative about him. Watch how he talks about you to other people. It's always about what you have, not who you are." But I was so tired of being alone. Tired of being the only single attorney at firm events. Tired of coming home to silence. So I pushed those small warning signs aside. The way Elias always subtly steered conversations back to my assets. How he'd casually say, "our place" or "our car," even though legally, everything was mine. How he never offered to split expenses equally, but always had money for designer clothes and gadgets he didn't need. 10 months in, he moved into my condo. His lease was ending. The conversation felt natural, and he started contributing $1,500 a month for utilities and groceries. It seemed fair. I owned the place outright, he shouldn't pay full market rent. But within weeks, things shifted. My carefully curated, minimalist aesthetic suddenly became cold and corporate to him. He started redecorating without even asking, bringing in furniture I never wanted, constantly inviting his friends over for poker nights that left beer rings on my antique coffee table. Then came the comments about my career. How I worked too much, how his buddy's girlfriend was a yoga instructor with a better work-life balance, how maybe I should consider estate planning, something less stressful than commercial real estate. Each comment felt minor in isolation, a gentle suggestion. But together they formed a pattern. A pattern I was too close, too desperate for connection to see. 8 months ago I proposed to him. It's me. I got down on one knee at our favorite restaurant, presenting a ring that cost 2 months of my salary. He cried, said yes, and immediately started posting photos with captions like, "set for life," and "found my forever home." Pause. Not forever person, but forever home. That should have been a giant red flag waving furiously. But I was swept up in the wedding planning, tackling it with the same intensity one brought to a major legal case. My half of the expenses quickly ballooned to $35,000. The Botanic Gardens venue, the photographer, caterer, florist, string quartet. Elias would occasionally mention costs, but never offered to split anything equally. And I, ever the optimist, told myself it was fine. I earned more after all. Chloe's skepticism, though, intensified. She'd watch him at dinner parties, noticing how he talked about our assets when everything was legally mine. How conversations always circled back to my condo's value or my savings, never my actual professional achievements. "He's not in love with you, Aubrey," she slurred one night after too much wine. "He's in love with what you've built." I didn't want to hear it. I was 3 months away from not being alone anymore. 3 months away from having someone to come home to. 3 months away from finally having what everyone else seemed to have so easily. And then Elias sat down in my home office and delivered his ultimatum. Transfer the condo. Transfer the car. Give me access to your savings. All of it. Or the wedding's off. I stared at him from across my desk. The desk I'd bought with my first bonus, in the office I'd meticulously created, in the condo I'd purchased all by myself. And in that moment, everything crystallized. He didn't want to build a life with me. He wanted to take possession of the life I'd already built. And he was using our wedding, our relationship, our supposed future as cold, hard leverage. "Let me think about it," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. He stood up, a smug, satisfied smirk playing on his lips, confident he'd won. "Don't take too long," he said, heading out the door. "Vendor deadlines, you know." After he left, I sat there for a long, long time. Mom's words echoed in my mind. Protect what you've built. Don't give anyone control. The difference between partnership and possession had never been clearer. And that's when I started planning something Elias would never see coming. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. Not just the audacity of the ultimatum, but the way he delivered it. That casual tone, like he was asking me to pick up milk. The rehearsed quality of his speech. The immediate jump to threats when I didn't instantly agree. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This was calculated. Sunday morning, Chloe and I met for our usual trail run at Washington Park. We'd been doing that same 7-mile loop for 5 years, twice around the reservoir. Usually we just chattered about work cases, nothing heavy. But today, I unloaded everything before we'd even finished the first mile. Chloe stopped mid-stride, hands on her knees, breathing heavily. But it wasn't from exertion. "Say that again," she gasped. "He wants what?" "The condo. The SUV. Access to my savings. All of it transferred into his name or at minimum joint ownership. 3 months before the wedding." She straightened up, her face hardening into an expression I rarely saw. Pure, unadulterated anger. "Aubrey," she spat, "that's not a partnership request. That's a heist with a ceremony attached." "He's making it sound reasonable, Chloe. Like I'm being paranoid for hesitating." "Of course he is." She grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. "My sister went through this exact thing 6 years ago. Her ex wanted his name on her car and condo to prove she trusted him. She did it because she loved him, didn't want him to feel like she was holding back. 2 years later, during the divorce, she had to buy him out of assets he never contributed a single cent toward. He walked away with $80,000 of her equity while she struggled to refinance everything back into her own name. A cold dread settled in my chest. "Chloe, I don't know what to do." "You call a lawyer today," she ordered. "Not a wedding planner, not a therapist. A lawyer who specializes in asset protection. And you don't tell Elias you're doing it." We finished the run in silence, my mind racing a mile a minute. By the time I got home, Elias was gone, off to one of his networking coffee meetings that never seemed to result in actual work. I showered, changed, and made a phone call I never imagined I'd be making 3 months before my wedding. Monday morning at 9 a.m. I called Benjamin Hayes. He was a senior family law partner at my firm, 62 years old, with a reputation for being brilliant and brutally honest. We'd worked together on a few cases where real estate intersected with divorce, and I deeply respected his perspective. "Aubrey, this is unexpected," he said when his assistant put me through. "What can I do for you?" I explained the situation as clinically as possible, keeping emotion out of my voice, presenting it like a case file. The ultimatum, the timing, the specific assets Elias wanted access to, the way he'd framed my hesitation as a character flaw. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Benjamin, are you there?" His voice had changed, taking on a weariness that made him sound every one of his 62 years. "Aubrey, I've been practicing family law for 30 years. I've seen this scenario play out more times than I can count. And it never ends well for the person with assets. So what does that mean legally? It means if you transfer these assets before marriage, you're making a gift with zero legal protection. Something happens, you break up, you have no recourse to get them back. After marriage, they become marital property, meaning in a divorce they'd be split. Either way, you're massively exposed." My attorney brain kicked in. The part of me that could analyze situations without emotion. "What about the timing? Does that matter?" "The timing," Benjamin's voice grew firmer, "is the biggest red flag here. An ultimatum 3 months before a wedding, after you've already paid deposits and made commitments? That's not love talking, Aubrey. That's strategy. That's someone who knows exactly what they're doing and is using your emotional investment and financial sunk costs as leverage." The words landed like a physical blow. "What should I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Tell him you want to consult a financial planner before making any decisions about asset transfer. Watch his reaction carefully. If he's a legitimate partner who wants what's best for both of you, he'll understand due diligence. If he's not, he'll escalate the pressure and make you feel guilty for being cautious." We talked for another 20 minutes. Benjamin asked detailed questions about Elias's financial situation, his contributions, his work history. With each answer, I could hear the concern deepening in his voice. "One more thing," he said before we hung up. "Document everything from this point forward. Keep records of conversations, texts, financial contributions. If this goes sideways, and I think it might based on what you've told me, you'll need proof this was calculated fraud, not just a relationship dispute." I spent the rest of Monday in a kind of dissociative state, one I recognized from particularly stressful cases. Physically present, going through the motions, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I attended meetings, reviewed contracts, responded to emails, but my mind was elsewhere. Replaying every interaction with Elias through the new chilling lens Benjamin had provided. How quickly things had changed after he moved in. How my home had stopped feeling like mine. How every conversation about my work had become criticism disguised as concern. How he'd never once suggested we build something new together, only that I transfer what I already owned. The pattern was forming, clear and undeniable now that I was finally looking at it. Wednesday night we had Thai food at home, eating at my kitchen table. The one I'd bought 3 years ago in the kitchen of the condo I'd owned for 6. I've been thinking about what you said, I began carefully, about the asset transfers. Elias looked up, his expression immediately guarded. And I want to talk to a financial advisor first. Just to make sure we're structuring everything properly for tax purposes, for legal protection. These are major financial decisions and I want to make sure we're doing them right. His face changed. The guardedness vanished, replaced by something harder, colder. You're overthinking this. I'm being cautious with major assets. That's not overthinking, Elias. That's being responsible. He slammed his fork down with unnecessary force. People who love each other don't need financial advisors to trust each other. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're treating our marriage like a business transaction. I'm treating major financial decisions like major financial decisions, I countered, my voice tight. He stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back. You know what this tells me? That you don't actually want to marry me. You want a prenup, a financial advisor, probably separate bank accounts too. That's not a marriage, Aubrey. That's a business arrangement where you keep all the power, and I'm just some accessory to your success. Elias, that's not what I'm saying. You're making this complicated because you can't handle the idea of actually sharing your life with someone. You built this fortress of assets and success and you don't actually want to let anyone in. You want a partner you can control, not an equal. He grabbed his keys and wallet. I'm going to stay at Finn's place for a few days. Maybe you'll figure out what you actually want because right now it's pretty clear you want a wedding more than a marriage. The door closed behind him. Not quite a slam but close enough to sting. I sat at that table for a long time after he left. The food grew cold. My mind cycled through everything he just said. The way he twisted my perfectly reasonable request into a character assassination. How he'd made me feel guilty for wanting to protect assets I'd built before he even existed in my life. How quickly he'd escalated from a simple conversation to abandonment. My phone buzzed. A text from Elias, staying at Finn's tonight. Needs space to think about whether we're actually ready for this. Then another, it hurts that you don't trust me enough to build a real partnership. And another, I thought you were different. Guess I was wrong. Each message was a calculated jab, designed to make me feel guilty, to question my judgment, to make me reach out and apologize for having boundaries. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat in my living room with my furniture in my home, and let myself feel what I'd been avoiding for weeks. This wasn't right. None of this was right. And something was about to happen that would prove just how wrong I'd been about Elias Vance. Elias stayed at Finn's place for 2 nights. 2 nights of relentless texts, all designed to make me feel guilty, to make me question myself, to soften me up for his return. I didn't respond to a single one. Instead, I buried myself in work, taking on extra assignments, staying busy enough to outrun the self-doubt. Wednesday evening, I dragged myself home, utterly exhausted. 12 straight hours of a brutal commercial lease negotiation, battling a client who thought he could rewrite basic contract law through sheer stubbornness. My feet ached from pacing, my head throbbed from staring at legal jargon. All I wanted was a glass of wine, blessed silence, and a hot bath. Instead, I walked into my condo and found Elias sprawled on my couch with Finn, his college roommate. Sports blared on my TV at a volume that drilled into my headache. Empty beer bottles littered my carefully maintained coffee table, leaving rings on the wood. Elias didn't even look up. Didn't acknowledge me. We're planning bachelor party details, he announced, gesturing vaguely. Finn found a place in Vegas. It's gonna be epic. I stood there for a moment, briefcase still in hand, professional clothes wrinkled, waiting. For an apology? An explanation? Anything. Nothing came. I'm going to get some wine, I muttered, mostly to myself. I walked towards the kitchen, too weary for confrontation, every muscle screaming. The open floor plan I'd loved when I bought this place. That seamless flow, the natural light. It was about to become the design choice that changed everything. Because just as I reached the kitchen, Finn's voice carried clearly from the living room. Have you told her about the Vegas budget yet? That's gonna be expensive as hell. I froze. Wine glass in hand, completely still, hidden just inside the kitchen by the angle of the wall. Elias's laugh followed. Not the soft, almost self-deprecating laugh he used with me. This was different. Darker. More calculating. Not yet, he chuckled. She'll cover it. She always does. Finn whistled. Dude, you've got her trained. My girlfriend would absolutely murder me if I pulled that. That's because your girlfriend doesn't have a paid-off condo in Cherry Creek and $100,000 in liquid savings, Elias said, his voice casual, like he was discussing sports scores. Aubrey's good for it. He works constantly anyway. Might as well benefit from it. The wine glass suddenly felt impossibly heavy. I set it down on the counter. Silently. Carefully. Every movement deliberate. My attorney brain, the one that knew evidence when it heard it, that understood the value of listening before reacting, kicked in. Finn's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial. And the asset transfer thing, bro? That's brilliant. Once your name's on that condo and the car, you've got real security. Even if things go sideways, you walk away with something substantial. That's thinking ahead. I know, Elias said, practically preening. My dad suggested it, actually. Everything inside me went cold. Your dad told you to do this? Yeah. He went through a messy divorce in his 30s and his ex-wife's name wasn't on anything. He got some alimony, but that was it. He walked away broke, starting from scratch at 40. He told me, never marry someone with assets without protecting yourself first. If she turns out to be difficult or controlling, you're not starting from zero. It's just smart planning. I heard the clink of beer bottles, the sound of them toasting to something. Then Elias added the part that made my blood turn to ice. Plus, once I have access to her savings account, I can finally launch that cryptocurrency fund I've been planning. She won't even notice if I move $50,000 into the initial investment. By the time we're married and she figures it out, it'll have doubled, hopefully tripled, and I'll be the one with the empire. She'll probably be proud of me for taking initiative. Finn laughed, loud and genuine. That's cold, man. But I respect the hustle. And you're right, she works like 80 hours a week. Probably won't even notice the money's gone until you've already made it back. Maybe you'll make enough to pay her back and keep the profits. That's the plan, Elias confirmed. She's so busy with her commercial real estate cases, she barely looks at her personal accounts. I've watched her. She checks her balance maybe once a month. By the time she realizes $50,000 is missing, I'll be able to explain it as an investment in our future. I stood in my kitchen. My kitchen in my condo bought with my money, listening to my fiancé and his friend plot my financial destruction with the casual ease of people planning a vacation. They kept talking about Vegas, about expensive bottle service, suites versus regular rooms. But I'd stopped listening to their words. I was processing what I'd just heard. Elias hadn't just asked for asset transfers on a whim. His father, Arthur, had coached him, giving him a strategy based on his own messy divorce. This was premeditated. Calculated. A plan forming since before Elias even moved into my condo. And the cryptocurrency scheme? He'd already decided to steal $50,000 from my savings. Not borrow. Not ask permission. So, he'd been watching my banking habits, timing his access request for when he could drain my account without immediate detection. The word difficult kept echoing. Arthur had warned him I might be difficult or controlling, which apparently meant objecting to financial exploitation. Standing up for myself. Protecting what I'd built. I forced myself to move, walking back through the living room as if I'd heard nothing. Both of them looked up briefly, then went right back to their Vegas plans. Elias gave me a smile that would have seemed warm if I hadn't just heard his true colors. Long day? He asked, almost concerned. Brutal, I managed. I'm going to take a shower. I went to my bedroom in my condo, and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like someone had just handed me the architectural blueprints for my own destruction. He'd drawn it all out. The asset transfer to secure his position, the savings drain for his crypto dreams. The entire blueprint of how Elias Vance planned to dismantle everything Aubrey Thorne had built. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd planned this entire scheme while living in the home of a corporate attorney who'd spent a decade learning how to protect assets, identify fraud, and document evidence. I walked into my bathroom, turned the shower as hot as it would go, and let the scalding water run over me until my skin turned red. Let it burn away the last remnants of doubt, the final threads of hope that maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was another explanation. There wasn't. There was only the ugly truth I'd overheard in my own living room. Elias wasn't building a life with me. He was systematically planning to strip everything I'd worked for, piece by piece. First, the asset transfer, getting his name on property he'd never contributed to. Then the savings drain, $50,000 stolen for gambling on cryptocurrency, something I'd never agree to if asked. His father had literally coached him on how to protect himself from me being difficult, which meant Arthur had taught him how to exploit someone who'd worked hard and built something real. He'd given him the playbook for financial abuse, disguised as partnership. And Elias had already decided I was too busy, too distracted, too focused on work to notice money disappearing from my own accounts. That I was an easy mark because I'd chosen career over constant vigilance. I turned off the shower and wrapped myself in a towel I'd bought with my own money, in the bathroom of the condo I'd purchased alone, long before Elias Vance ever existed in my life. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was someone I recognized. Not the version who'd been doubting herself all week. Not the version who'd felt guilty for wanting to protect her assets. But the version who'd worked 80-hour weeks and sacrificed everything to build something that mattered. That woman knew exactly what to do. If Elias wanted to play strategic games with my life's work, I'd play too. But this game would have rules he didn't know existed. This game would have only one winner. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be him. I got dressed, dried my hair, and started making phone calls. First to Benjamin Hayes, leaving a voicemail about needing to discuss something urgent. Then to Denise, my building manager, about lock changes. Then to Chloe, just 3 words: "You were right." By the time I walked back out of my bedroom composed and calm, I'd already started building my counterattack. Elias and Finn finally stumbled out around midnight, loud and drunk, completely oblivious to the fact that I'd heard every single word of their conversation. After they were gone, I stood in my living room staring at the beer bottles, the rings on my coffee table, the disgusting mess they'd made of my space. Then, methodically, completely, I cleaned it all up. Wiped down every surface, threw away every bottle, restored my home to exactly how it had been before they'd invaded it. It felt profoundly symbolic. I was taking back my space, erasing their presence. Thursday morning, I was at my desk by 7 a.m. By 8, Benjamin Hayes was on the phone. "I overheard something last night," I said, no preamble. Elias and his friend Finn. They were in my living room planning his bachelor party, and I heard the entire conversation from the kitchen. I recounted everything word for word as close as I could remember it. The Vegas expenses Elias expected me to cover. The asset transfer being Arthur's idea, a strategy from his dad's divorce. The cryptocurrency scheme. The $50,000 Elias planned to steal from my savings the moment he had access. The silence on Benjamin's end was so long I had to check my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Benjamin, are you there?" His voice when it came was completely changed. Urgent. Grave. "Aubrey, you need to protect everything. Today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. What do I need to do?" My pen was already flying across a notepad. Change every password on every account. Bank accounts, investment accounts, credit cards, everything. Change every security question. If he has any visibility, even just knowing login info, remove his access immediately. Then, he paused, change your locks. All of them. Entrance, deadbolts, garage access. Every single lock in that condo. What about documentation? Write down everything you remember from that conversation while it's fresh. Exact quotes if possible. Close paraphrases if not. Note the time, the location, who was present. Create a spreadsheet of what you owned before Elias, versus what you purchased together. I'm guessing that's going to be heavily weighted toward your assets. He added, take photographs of every room showing your property. Back everything up to encrypted cloud storage and send copies to me and to someone you trust completely. Chloe, perfect. Do all of this today. If this escalates to legal action, and I think it might based on what you've told me, you'll need proof this was calculated fraud, not just a relationship dispute. I was already opening my laptop, pulling up my banking website. The locks are going to be expensive. I don't care if they cost $5,000, Aubrey. Change them today. He has keys to your condo and he's planning to drain your savings. You cannot let him have physical access to your space while you're protecting your accounts. By 9 a.m. I'd changed every password on every financial account I had. By 10 I'd updated all security questions to answers Elias would never dream of guessing, replacing my mother's maiden name with obscure references only I would know, changing my first pet's name to a randomly generated phrase, creating layers of security that would take a determined hacker weeks to break through. At 11 I called Denise, my building's property manager, who'd always been incredibly efficient. Denise, I need to change all the locks in my unit today if possible. Tomorrow at the absolute latest. There was a slight pause. Oh, Aubrey? Is everything okay? I'm ending my engagement, I explained, trying to keep my voice even. My fiancé has keys and I need them to stop working immediately. Her voice softened. I understand completely. Let me call our locksmith. With your smart lock system, it'll run about $1,200 for everything: entrance, deadbolt, garage access codes. That's fine. Can they do it tomorrow? I'll make it a priority. Will you be home? No, but I'll give you authorization to let them in. Just please make sure it happens before end of day Friday. Consider it done. Aubrey. I'm so sorry you're going through this. After I hung up, I opened a new spreadsheet. One column for items I'd owned before Elias moved in. Another for items we'd purchased together. The condo, 100% mine, purchased 6 years ago, mortgage paid off 2 years ago. The SUV, 100% mine, purchased 3 years ago with cash. Furniture, approximately 95% mine, accumulated over 6 years. Joint purchases? One high-end coffee maker, about $400. Set of cookware I never used, $300. Decorative pillows for the couch, maybe $200. A smart TV he'd insisted we needed, $600. Total joint purchases, $1,500. Out of an estimated $250,000 in assets within the condo. I created another spreadsheet tracking Elias's financial contributions. $1,500 monthly for 10 months, totaling $15,000. Utilities and groceries. Nothing toward the mortgage, which no longer existed. Nothing toward property taxes or HOA fees. Nothing toward the actual ownership of anything. Then, phone in hand, I went room by room photographing everything. Every angle, every item. The furniture, the art, the appliances, the flooring, the fixtures. A visual record of what existed in my space before I removed Elias from it. I encrypted everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud service. Then I sent copies to Benjamin and Chloe with a simple subject line, documentation. Chloe called immediately. What am I looking at? Evidence. In case Elias tries to claim he contributed to any of my assets, or has rights to anything in the condo. You're really doing this? Her voice held a mix of shock and admiration. I'm really doing this. Good, she said, her voice fierce. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Friday afternoon, while Elias was supposedly at work. You know, those coffee meetings that never resulted in actual employment. I made a call that felt both petty and absolutely justified. I called Graham, the owner of the men's boutique in Lammer Square, where Elias's custom wedding suit was being held. We'd had several conversations over the past few months. Elias going through multiple fittings, changing details, obsessing over the burgundy lining, the monogrammed cufflinks, the way the charcoal fabric draped. I'd paid for all of it. $5,000 for a suit he'd wear once. Graham, this is Aubrey Thorne, I said, my voice crisp. We need to talk about Elias Vance's wedding suit. Of course, Aubrey. His final fitting is scheduled for Monday afternoon. Is there a problem? The wedding's off. We broke up. I'd like to donate the suit. Silence. Then a hesitant, I'm sorry. Donate it? You partner with a veterans charity, correct? Veterans Career Closet. Yes, you do. Graham, this is a $5,000 custom-tailored suit that I paid for. Every single cent. Elias has been living rent-free in my condo for 10 months while I've covered all wedding expenses. I want that suit donated to a veteran who actually needs it. Someone who will wear it with honor to job interviews, instead of using it as a costume for a fraudulent wedding. Graham was quiet for a long moment. If you paid for it, then legally it's yours to donate. But are you certain? This is quite an expensive gesture. I'm completely certain. He has a final fitting scheduled for Monday afternoon. I want the suit gone before he arrives. Can someone from the charity pick it up tomorrow? I can arrange that. But Aubrey, he's going to be very upset when he shows up and discovers the suit is gone. That's the point, I said, a wry smile touching my lips. And Graham, when he does show up, just tell him there was a miscommunication and his suit was donated. Don't mention my involvement unless he asks directly. This feels like there's quite a story here. There is, I confirmed. And it ends with a deserving veteran getting a beautiful suit instead of a con artist wearing it to a wedding that was always about accessing my assets. Saturday morning, I woke up with absolute piercing clarity about what needed to happen next. I drove to the Botanic Gardens, our booked ceremony space. Clara, our coordinator, looked instantly concerned the moment I walked in alone. Aubrey, is Elias meeting you here? No, I said, my voice steady. I need to cancel the wedding. Her expression shifted to professional sympathy. I'm so sorry. Let me pull up your contract. She typed for a moment. The deposit is non-refundable, and canceling within 90 days means we retain 60% of the remaining balance. Total would be about $14,000. I pulled out my checkbook without a second's hesitation. I'd like to pay that now. For the next 2 hours, I systematically canceled every single vendor. The photographer, $2,000 lost. The caterer, $3,500 gone. The florist, $1,800. The string quartet, $1,200. Each cancellation felt like cutting a cord that had been slowly, painfully strangling me. By noon, I'd spent $23,000 canceling a wedding to a man who'd planned to steal $50,000 from my savings. Still cheaper than his plan. As I was finalizing the paperwork with Clara, she mentioned something that stopped me cold. By the way, a young couple inquired about your October date last week. Both elementary school teachers. They absolutely loved the garden space, but when I quoted them the price, they said it was beyond their budget. The bride actually cried. It was heartbreaking. Something shifted in my chest. What would make it affordable for them? Clara calculated quickly. If someone covered about $8,000 of the venue cost, they could probably manage the rest with their savings. My hand was shaking slightly as I wrote another check. Apply this to their booking. Anonymous donor. Tell them someone wanted them to have a beautiful wedding day. Clara's eyes filled with tears. You're going through a breakup and you're paying for complete strangers to get married? I'm paying for good people to have something beautiful, I corrected her softly. Elias was going to use my money to fund cryptocurrency gambling. This feels infinitely better. Sunday morning, I packed all of Elias's belongings. Every designer shirt still in my closet. Every expensive gadget scattered through my space. His cryptocurrency magazines now feeling like exhibits in a case. His motivational business books about manifesting wealth and attracting abundance. Every single physical trace of him. I labeled each box clearly, then stacked them precisely in my assigned parking space in the garage. Then I sat at my kitchen table and drafted a text message. I wrote it 17 different times, agonizing over every word before I got it exactly right. Elias, I've thought carefully about your proposal regarding asset transfer. You're right. We need to be on the same page about this marriage. I've realized we have fundamentally different definitions of partnership. You see assets to acquire and exploit. I see a life's work to protect. I've canceled the wedding and all vendors. Your belongings are boxed in parking space 23. I've changed all locks and access codes. Collect your things by Monday noon, after which everything will be donated. I wish you clarity about what partnership actually means. I read it one final time. Then with a deep breath I hit send, powered off my phone completely, and called Chloe. Pack a bag, I instructed. We're going to Breckenridge for the weekend. Right now. Seriously right now. We stayed in a small cabin in the mountains. Hiked trails where the aspen trees were just starting to turn gold. Drank wine by a roaring fireplace. We talked about everything except Elias. Chloe kept watching me, a worried frown on her face. You're weirdly calm about this, Aubrey. I'm not calm, I corrected her, a genuine smile finally breaking through. I'm free. There's a difference. Sunday evening, Chloe and I drove back from Breckenridge as the sun dipped behind the mountains. All weekend my phone had been off, completely powered down. For 48 hours, Elias Vance and his schemes simply didn't exist. Now, sitting in Chloe's car as we pulled into Denver, I held the phone, my finger hovering over the power button. You don't have to turn it on yet, Chloe said quietly. I do, I replied, a grim resolve settling in. I need to see how bad it is. I pressed the button and watched the screen light up. It took a full 30 seconds for all the notifications to load. 87 missed calls. 62 text messages. 15 voicemails. Jesus, Chloe breathed, glancing at my screen. He completely lost it. I started scrolling through the texts, watching Elias's mental state deteriorate in real time. They'd started arriving within an hour of my text on Sunday morning. First came confusion. What are you talking about? Is this a joke? Call me immediately. Then urgent confusion. Aubrey, I just tried my key and it doesn't work. What's going on? Call me now. Then panic. I went to the garage and all my stuff is in boxes. Please tell me this is some kind of test. Please call me. We need to talk. Then anger started bleeding through. You can't just cancel our wedding without discussing it. We paid deposits together. This is insane. We hadn't. I'd paid every single one. The messages continued, timestamps showing he'd been texting every 20 to 30 minutes for hours. Everyone's asking me what happened. What am I supposed to tell them? That you went crazy. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. We're supposed to be partners. I can't believe you're doing this over text. Then the rage fully emerged. You know what? Everyone's going to know what kind of person you really are. Controlling. Incapable of trust. You're going to die alone in that condo you care about more than actual human beings. I gave up everything for you, moved into your place, dealt with your insane work hours, put up with your controlling behavior, and this is how you repay me. Chloe was reading over my shoulder, her jaw practically on the floor. Put up with your controlling behavior? Is he serious? Keep reading, I said flatly. It gets worse. The bargaining phase started around midnight Sunday. Aubrey, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. Please, let's just talk face to face. We can work through this. Forget the asset thing. Let's just talk about a prenup instead. Would that make you feel better? I'll sign whatever you want. Please don't throw away what we have over money. I love you, not your condo or your car. Please just call me. Then his father's voicemail. Chloe insisted on listening. I put it on speaker. Arthur Vance's voice was cold, controlled rage. Miss Thorne, this is Arthur Vance, Elias's father. What you're doing is not only cruel, it's financial abuse. You manipulated my son, made him financially dependent on you, and now you're publicly abandoning him to humiliate him. You will fix this situation immediately, or you will face serious legal consequences. I promise you that. Chloe's mouth fell open. His father literally coached him to steal your assets and now you're the financial abuser? Projection is a hell of a thing. There were texts from Finn too. You're cold for doing this over text. Elias deserves better than a corporate shark with no heart. And from numbers I didn't recognize, probably Elias's friends. I don't know what Elias did, but you didn't have to humiliate him like this. Canceling a wedding 3 months out? That's brutal. I hope you're happy with yourself. I scrolled through them all, feeling nothing. No guilt, no second thoughts, no desire to respond or explain. Just a distant curiosity about how someone could be so completely delusional about their own behavior. Are you going to respond? Chloe asked. No, I said, hitting the delete button on each message one by one. There's nothing to say. He knows what he did. His father knows what they planned. Responding would just give him an opening to manipulate me again. Monday morning I did something I'd been planning since Friday. Something that felt wonderfully petty, perfectly poetic, and absolutely necessary for my own sense of closure. I called in sick to work. My first sick day in over a year. Then I drove to Lammer Square, parked across the street from Graham's boutique, and waited. Large coffee in hand, sunglasses on despite the overcast Denver weather, my car positioned for a perfect view of the entrance. Elias's final fitting was scheduled for 2 p.m. I watched people walk by, watched Graham help other customers, watched the normal rhythm of a Monday afternoon unfold. At exactly 2 o'clock, Elias's old Honda Civic pulled up to a parking meter. I sat up straighter, coffee halfway to my lips. He got out of the car with that confident stride I used to find attractive. Shoulders back, chin up, like he was about to do something profoundly important. He was probably already composing the sympathy story. My crazy ex canceled our wedding, but at least I'll look good in this suit when I find someone better. He walked into the boutique. I checked my watch. 2:03. At 2:06 the door burst open. Elias stormed out, phone already at his ear, face dark red with rage. Even with my windows up across the street I could hear him screaming, "What do you mean donated?" He paced the sidewalk, wild gestures completely unraveling in public. People walking by actually stopped to stare. I don't care who technically paid for it. That's my suit. My wedding suit. More pacing, more screaming into his phone. Get it back right now or I'm calling the police. This is theft. I took a slow sip of my coffee watching the show unfold. Then something happened. Something I hadn't anticipated. Something that made the entire situation absolutely perfect. A man walked out of the boutique behind Elias. Late 40s. Military posture. Close-cropped hair graying at the temples. And he was wearing the suit. Elias's suit. The charcoal-tailored Tom Ford with the burgundy lining. The man stopped in front of Graham's shop window, looking at his reflection with an expression I recognized. The kind of wonder that comes from seeing yourself as someone you'd forgotten you could be. He touched the lapels gently as if afraid it might disappear. Turned slightly to see the fit from different angles. He stood taller. Shoulders back. Chin up. The suit transformed him. Graham came out, walked over to the man, shook his hand warmly, said something I couldn't hear that made the man smile. A real smile. Genuine. Grateful. That's when Elias turned around and saw him. I watched his face go through the most remarkable transformation. Confusion first. Why is someone wearing a suit that looks exactly like mine? Then recognition. Oh my God, that's my suit. Then pure, incandescent rage. That's my suit, he shrieked across the sidewalk. Several people stopped walking. A couple pulled out their phones, probably thinking they were about to witness a brawl. Graham stepped calmly between Elias and the veteran, one hand up in a calming gesture. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. Graham's voice was calm. Professional. Completely in control. This suit was donated by the person who purchased it. Elias's voice grew louder, shriller. I don't care about his interview. That's my wedding suit. Mine. The veteran, Mr. Harrison, I later learned, looked uncomfortable, started to say something. Graham cut him off firmly. You absolutely will not give it back. The suit is yours. Earned and deserved. My phone started ringing. I looked down and saw Elias on the screen. Looked back up and watched him across the street. Phone pressed to his ear. staring at the boutique entrance as if I might materialize if he willed it hard enough. I declined the call. Watched him look at his phone in disbelief. He dialed again. Declined it again. A third time. A fourth. Each time, his movements became more agitated, more frantic. Finally, he screamed at no one in particular. "You can't do this, Aubrey. That suit cost $5,000. Graham raised one eyebrow. I could see it clearly from across the street. That perfect expression of devastating calm. "You're welcome to pursue legal action." However, Miss Thorne provided extensive documentation proving she paid for the entire ensemble. "You'll be suing the person who purchased it for donating their own property. I encourage you to consult an attorney about the likely outcome." The small crowd that had gathered was watching with open interest now. Someone was definitely filming. Elias stood there, face red, fists clenched, looking between Graham, Mr. Harrison in his suit, and the people staring at him. Then he turned, stormed back to his Honda Civic, the 15-year-old car he'd been driving when we met, which had sat mostly unused in my garage for 10 months while he drove my SUV everywhere. He got in, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking spot so aggressively his tires squealed against the pavement. I watched him disappear down the street, then looked back at the boutique. Mr. Harrison was going back inside with Graham, both of them talking, the veteran still touching the jacket as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. I finished my coffee, started my car, and drove home. The best part wasn't Elias's public humiliation, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel deeply, utterly satisfying. The best part was knowing that, right now, a truly good man was wearing that $5,000 suit. A man who would wear it with honor to a job interview, who would use it to rebuild his life, who deserved it infinitely more than Elias ever had. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. When I got back to my condo that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in months. Watching Elias unravel on that sidewalk, watching Mr. Harrison walk away in that suit with quiet dignity and hope. It had given me the closure I needed. But Elias wasn't done. Not even close. By Tuesday morning, my phone was filling up with a different kind of message. Not from Elias, but from mutual acquaintances, people from my building, even a few distant colleagues. The smear campaign had begun. Elias's social media had transformed overnight into a performance of utter heartbreak. Cryptic posts appeared every few hours. Sometimes you discover someone's true colors when you ask them to treat you as an equal partner. Narcissists weaponize their success to control and discard people who genuinely love them. Financial abuse is real, and it's not always the man doing it to the woman. Each post got dozens of sympathetic comments. His friends piled on, adding their own observations about how I'd always seemed cold, and never really fit with Elias's warm energy. One of his college friends posted, "I always thought there was something off about her. Too focused on money, not enough on the relationship." Another, "Elias dodged a bullet. Anyone who cancels a wedding over asset protection doesn't understand what marriage means." The narrative was carefully constructed, and it was spreading like wildfire. I was the controlling corporate shark who'd manipulated Elias emotionally, made him financially dependent, then cruelly discarded him when he'd asked for basic respect and partnership. I'd stolen his wedding suit out of spite. I'd canceled everything without discussion, proving my domineering nature. People I barely knew started calling. "Mrs. Lopez from my building's social committee. Aubrey, I heard what happened with your engagement. I'm disappointed in how you handled it. That poor man seemed so devoted to you." A paralegal from another firm. "Is it true you kicked Elias out and donated his belongings without even talking to him?" Even my dry cleaner making awkward small talk. "I heard about your breakup. Seems like it got messy." I didn't defend myself to any of them. What was I supposed to say? Actually, he was planning to steal $50,000 from my savings? They wouldn't believe me. Elias's version was already set in their minds. Chloe was absolutely furious. "You need to tell people what actually happened. He's destroying your reputation." "Let him," I said, though it stung more than I let on. "The people who matter will figure it out. And the people who don't matter, don't matter." But Chloe was right about one thing. The story was spreading through Denver's professional community faster than I'd anticipated. By Wednesday, I'd had 3 uncomfortable conversations at work from people who'd heard something and wanted to know if I was okay. That's when Eleanor Sterling stepped in. Eleanor was our senior partner, 68 years old. With silver hair she wore in a sharp bob and a reputation for absolutely destroying opposing counsel in depositions. She'd been practicing family law for 4 decades, and she had exactly 0 patience for financial manipulation in relationships. Thursday afternoon she appeared in my office doorway. "Close your door," she said. I did. "I've been hearing things," Eleanor said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About you and your ex-fiancé. about how you supposedly abused him financially and stole his wedding suit. My stomach dropped. Eleanor, she held up one hand. I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I'm telling you that I've already started correcting the record. What? Last night at a bar association mixer, someone brought up your situation, tried to paint you as some kind of monster. So I told them the truth. Eleanor's expression was steel. That Elias Vance tried to manipulate you into transferring your condo, car, and six-figure savings before marriage. That you overheard him planning to steal $50,000 for a cryptocurrency scheme. That you protected your assets and ended the engagement. That the suit donation was because you paid for it entirely while he lived rent-free for 10 months. I stared at her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I've spent 40 years watching women get financially exploited in marriages and divorces. I've seen it play out 100 different ways, and it always starts like this. With a man who sees a successful woman as an opportunity rather than a partner. She leaned forward, her gaze piercing. You did exactly the right thing, Aubrey. And I'm not going to sit quietly while some con artist and his enabling father try to destroy your reputation for protecting what you built. My throat felt tight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just know that the story is shifting. People are starting to ask questions, and Elias's version is falling apart under basic scrutiny. He was right. By the end of the week, people who'd initially been sympathetic to Elias were calling me to apologize. I'm so sorry, Aubrey. I didn't have the full story. I should have asked you directly instead of believing gossip. What he tried to do. That's horrible. I'm glad you got out. But the most unexpected call came 2 weeks after the boutique incident. My phone rang with a number I recognized. Finn. Elias's college roommate, the one who'd been in my living room discussing the asset transfer scheme. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Aubrey, this is Finn, Elias's friend. Can we talk? Can I buy you coffee? Every instinct screamed decline, but something in his voice made me pause. Why? I asked cautiously. Because I need to apologize. And I need to tell you something about what's happening. We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, neutral territory. Finn looked profoundly uncomfortable the moment he sat down, like he was about to confess something he'd been carrying for far too long. I need to apologize, he started, for my part in encouraging Elias, for being in your living room that night talking about his plans like it was all just some game. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. Elias is telling everyone you're a monster, that you financially abused him, controlled him, humiliated him. But I was there. I heard him talking about the asset transfer plan, the cryptocurrency fund his dad's coaching. I know what he was actually planning to do. So why are you here now? Finn ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Because I've seen him do this before. In college, he had a girlfriend named Isabella. He convinced her to co-sign a business loan for some startup. He trusted him completely. He defaulted on the loan within 6 months and completely destroyed her credit score. She spent years rebuilding, couldn't get approved for an apartment lease, had to move back in with her parents. My chest tightened. And you knew about this? I knew. I thought it was just a stupid mistake he made when he was young. But then watching what he tried to do to you, how he's lying about everything now, painting himself as the victim, I realized he wasn't making a mistake. He was just running a more sophisticated version of the same scheme. He didn't change. He just got better at it. Why tell me this now? Because his dad found a lawyer. They're planning to sue you for the wedding suit and emotional distress. They're going to claim you stole his property, publicly humiliated him, and I can't stay silent about that. Finn pulled out his phone, showed me a text thread with Elias from 2 weeks ago before the boutique incident. Elias bragging about the crypto fund he was going to launch with Aubrey's money, about how she'd never notice 50 grand missing, about how once his name was on her assets he'd have real security. I'm willing to testify, Finn said, his gaze meeting mine. If it goes to court about what I heard him say, what his actual plans were. It's the least I can do. I took photos of the text thread with my own phone. Thank you, I said simply. This helps. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I should have warned you before it got this far. After Finn left, I sat in that coffee shop for a long time thinking about Isabella, about how many other women there might have been, about patterns of behavior that don't change, just evolve. Then I called Benjamin Hayes. We might have a lawsuit coming, I told him. But we also have a witness willing to testify about what Elias was actually planning. Good, Benjamin said, his voice instantly sharp. Let me handle this. Within 48 hours, Benjamin had drafted a legal letter that was essentially a surgical strike. 8 pages outlining exactly what discovery would reveal if Elias proceeded with litigation. Documented evidence of his plan to drain my savings for unauthorized cryptocurrency investment. Testimony from multiple witnesses about the asset transfer scheme being premeditated. Proof that I'd paid for all wedding expenses including the disputed suit. Bank records showing Elias's minimal contributions to household expenses. A proposed countersuit for attempted financial fraud and coercion. The letter's conclusion was devastating. Should your client proceed with litigation, please be advised that Ms. Thorne is a corporate real estate attorney with extensive trial experience and unlimited access to expert witnesses regarding financial manipulation in intimate relationships. Discovery will be invasive, thorough, and costly for your client. We encourage you to advise Mr. Vance accordingly. Benjamin sent it on a Tuesday. By Friday, Elias's attorney had withdrawn from the case. Elias's father, Arthur, called me directly one last time. His voice was tight, barely controlled rage. You think you've won? You think destroying my son's reputation makes you powerful, but everyone will eventually see what you really are. Kept my voice level. Everyone already sees what your son really is, Mr. Vance. That's precisely the problem. You coached him to exploit me and now you're angry it didn't work. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have recordings of your son discussing the exact strategy you taught him. I have witnesses. I have documentation. If you contact me again, I'll add harassment to the countersuit. Are we clear? Silence. Then the call ended. I blocked both their numbers and never heard from either of them again. The lawsuit threat evaporated completely and slowly my life started returning to something resembling normal. Except it wasn't the same normal. It was better. Because I'd learned something Elias and his father never expected me to learn. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. And sometimes the people who call you cold are just angry you won't let them rob you blind. The weeks after blocking Elias and Arthur were strange. Not difficult exactly, just strange. Like adjusting to profound silence after living next to constant construction noise for months. I threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd always had, but now it felt different. Lighter. I wasn't coming home to someone who resented my success. Wasn't defending my career choices. Wasn't monitoring my bank accounts for unauthorized transfers. My condo felt like mine again. I rearranged furniture back to how I'd originally had it. Donated the expensive, ugly pieces Elias had brought in. Replaced the cryptocurrency magazines on my coffee table with books I'd been meaning to read for years. Chloe came over one Friday night with wine and takeout. You seem different, she said, settling onto my couch. Different how? Lighter. Like you've been holding your breath for a year and finally exhaled. She wasn't wrong. 3 months after the breakup, Eleanor called me into her office. Close the door, she said, and my stomach instantly dropped. That tone usually meant bad news. But Eleanor was smiling. The partnership committee met yesterday. We'd like to offer you junior partner effective immediately. I stared at her, stunned. I thought that wasn't happening until next year? It wasn't. But I made the case that your judgment under personal pressure, the way you handled the situation with Elias, demonstrated exactly the kind of clear thinking and self-protection we value in partners. You didn't let emotion cloud your judgment. You documented everything, protected your assets, and handled the aftermath with professionalism. The committee agreed. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. Say yes and then get back to work. The Henderson commercial lease isn't going to negotiate itself. I said yes. That weekend, Chloe and I booked a trip to Portugal. 3 glorious weeks in September. We stayed in small coastal towns, feasted on seafood, drank local wine, and hiked along cliffs overlooking the Atlantic. For 3 weeks, I didn't obsessively check my work email. Didn't think about Elias. I just existed in the moment. This is who you're supposed to be, Aubrey, Chloe said one afternoon as we sat on a sun-drenched beach. Not the version who was constantly monitoring someone else's moods and schemes. I forgot what peace felt like, I admitted. Don't forget again, she warned gently. When I got back to Denver, my condo felt even more like home. I'd missed it in a way I never had when Elias was living there. Missed the quiet. Missed having space that was entirely my own. Then 6 months after canceling the wedding, something arrived that changed everything. A large envelope came to my office with Graham's boutique return address. Inside was a short note. Thought you should see this. And a card. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, like someone who didn't write by hand very often. The card had a simple design. Thank you on the front in elegant script. Inside, the message read, Miss Thorne, Mr. Graham gave me your work address and said it would be okay to write to you. I'm James Harrison, the veteran who received the suit you donated. I wanted you to know what that gift meant to me. I got the corporate security job I interviewed for. The one I wore your suit to. I've been promoted twice in 6 months. I'm now managing security for an entire tech campus. But more than the job, that suit gave me something I'd lost. Confidence, dignity, the feeling that I belonged in professional spaces again. I'd been feeling invisible, like my military experience didn't count in the civilian world. But when I put on that suit and looked in the mirror, I saw someone who belonged. Someone professional. Someone valuable. Your generosity changed my life. With deepest gratitude, James Harrison. The note ended with a small, enclosed photo. James Harrison standing tall in front of a gleaming corporate building, wearing the charcoal Tom Ford suit with burgundy lining. The exact same suit Elias had spent hours selecting, obsessing over every detail. But on James it looked different. It looked earned. He stood with his shoulders back, chin up, eyes clear. He looked like he belonged exactly where he was. I sat at my desk holding that card for a long time, feeling something profound shift in my chest. Not just satisfaction that the suit had gone to someone who deserved it, but genuine joy that something truly good had come from what I considered my worst judgment call. I framed the photo and hung it in my home office, right above my desk. During late nights reviewing contracts or preparing for difficult negotiations, I'd look up and see James Harrison, standing proud in that suit. And I'd remember that sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. October arrived. The month that should have been my wedding. Chloe insisted we go to the Botanic Gardens that day. Trust me, she said when I protested. We arrived to find a wedding in progress. The young teachers, the couple anonymously sponsored with my $8,000 venue contribution. The ceremony was simple, beautiful. The bride was crying during her vows, real tears, not a performance. The groom held her hands like she was something precious and rare. Their friends and family filled the garden with genuine laughter and joy. Chloe and I watched from a distance, and something in my chest that had been tight for months finally loosened. That's what it's supposed to look like, Chloe said quietly. Clara, the venue coordinator, spotted us and walked over. Aubrey, I'd hoped you might come. The bride specifically asked me to thank you if I ever saw you. She said someone believing in their love, when they couldn't afford to celebrate it properly, meant more than the money. I watched the couple's first dance, and for the first time since the boutique incident, I cried. Not from sadness or regret, but from something like profound closure. My money had created actual joy instead of funding a fraudulent performance. And somehow that made everything worth it. Chloe and I left the Botanic Gardens as the sun was setting, the newlyweds still dancing under string lights I'd helped pay for. The whole drive home I felt something I hadn't expected. Not sadness that it wasn't my wedding, but genuine happiness that my money had created something real and beautiful. You okay? Chloe asked as we pulled up to my building. Yeah, I said, a soft smile on my face. I really am. The weeks and months that followed blurred together in the best possible way. Not the exciting blur of crisis and drama, but the peaceful blur of a life finally running smoothly. Work consumed me, but this time in a healthy way. The junior partnership came with major clients. A tech company relocating their headquarters to Denver, a national retail chain renegotiating mall leases. Complex cases that demanded my full attention and expertise. Eleanor pulled me aside one afternoon. You're different lately. Different how? Sharper. More confident. Like you're not carrying extra weight anymore. He was right. Without Elias's constant criticism, without monitoring my accounts for unauthorized transfers, without defending my career choices every evening, I had energy I'd forgotten existed. I mentored younger associates the way Eleanor had mentored me. When a 26-year-old named Jessica came to me, worried about her boyfriend's sudden interest in her inheritance, I didn't hesitate. Has he asked you to add his name to anything? Bank accounts, property titles. Jessica nodded slowly. He said it would show I trust him. Don't do it, I said firmly. And if he makes it an ultimatum, that tells you everything you need to know about what he actually wants. A month later, Jessica came back to thank me. She'd ended the relationship after her boyfriend escalated from requests to demands. You probably saved me from making a huge mistake. Someone should have warned me earlier. I'm just glad I can warn you, I replied. Chloe and I started hosting monthly dinners at my condo. Just single, professional women sharing resources and support. An informal network where we could talk honestly about red flags, financial independence, and navigating dating while successful. At one dinner, a tax attorney named Sarah said something that stuck with me. I used to think having money would make relationships easier. Turns out it just reveals who people really are faster. Everyone nodded. A year after canceling the wedding, Eleanor called me into her office with news. Elias moved back to Phoenix. He's working at a car dealership now. How do you know this? I asked, a faint smile playing on my lips. I have friends everywhere, she said, her eyes twinkling, including one whose daughter is dating someone who works with Arthur Vance. Apparently, Elias is currently dating a woman who owns a catering business. His father's already coaching him on how to get his name on her commercial kitchen lease. I waited for anger to come, or anxiety, or the urge to warn this woman I'd never met. But I felt nothing except pity for her and hope she'd figure it out before it was too late. I warned Veronica, I said. I documented everything. His pattern is visible to anyone who looks. I can't save everyone from him, Eleanor. Some lessons people have to learn themselves. That's very mature of you, she acknowledged. I just want him to be someone else's problem, not mine. And he was. Elias became irrelevant. A closed chapter. A cautionary tale I occasionally shared with younger women, but not something I carried with me anymore. My dating life remained minimal, but by choice. I went out occasionally, met interesting people, but I quickly developed an almost allergic reaction to certain red flags. One guy on a second date looked around my condo and said, "This is awfully nice for one person. Seems like a waste." I ended the date immediately. Another man, during a third date dinner, mentioned I didn't really need such an expensive car, and could probably downsize to something more practical. I blocked his number before dessert arrived. Chloe found this hilarious. "You've developed a zero-tolerance policy." "I've developed standards," I corrected her. "There's a difference." "Fair enough." 18 months after the breakup, Graham from the boutique called again. "Aubrey," he said, "I have an unusual request. Mr. Harrison, the veteran who received the suit, has been asking if I could connect you too. He wants to take you to lunch to say thank you properly. Would you be comfortable with that?" My first instinct was to decline. The whole situation felt potentially awkward. But something made me hesitate. "Let me think about it." I called Chloe. "What do you think?" "I think it might give you closure on the one truly good thing that came from that whole mess," she offered. "And if it's weird, you can always leave." I agreed to lunch. James Harrison showed up at the restaurant with his wife, Diane, which immediately made everything less awkward. They were both in their late 40s, warm and genuine in a way that felt instantly comfortable. "I don't know the full story of what happened," James said after we'd ordered. "Graham wouldn't share details and I didn't want to pry. But I need you to know what that suit did for me." He explained how he'd been out of work for 8 months after leaving the military. How he'd been applying for corporate security positions but getting nowhere. How wearing that tailored suit to the interview had changed everything. Not just how others saw him, but how he saw himself. "I'd been feeling invisible," he said, his voice thick with emotion, like my military experience didn't count in the civilian world. "But when I put on that suit and looked in the mirror, I saw someone who belonged. Someone professional. Someone valuable." Diane reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "He came home that day and cried. Said a stranger had given him dignity when he was running out of hope. It wasn't just the job," James continued. "Though I did get that position and I've been promoted twice since then. It was getting my confidence back. That suit became my interview uniform. Every important meeting, every promotion discussion, I wear it. It reminds me that I deserve to be there." We stayed for 3 hours talking about everything except Elias. They told me about their daughter in college, about Diane's work as a teacher, about their plans to travel once she retired. Before we left, Diane said, "I know this might sound strange, but we'd love to stay in touch. You gave James something precious when you didn't have to. That matters." They became real friends. The kind who invited me to their daughter's graduation, who texted me photos of their vacation, who genuinely cared about my life. James and Diane reminded me that good people existed. People who valued gifts without trying to manipulate the giver. 2 years after I changed those locks, I woke up on a random Tuesday morning and realized something profound had shifted. I made coffee in my kitchen, looking out at the Denver skyline through windows I'd chosen when I bought this place. The morning light hit the hardwood floors exactly right, creating patterns I'd noticed 1,000 times, but somehow appreciated more deeply now. I hadn't thought about Elias in weeks. Not with anger or regret or even curiosity. He'd simply become irrelevant. A person who used to exist in my life but didn't anymore. I looked around my condo. Every piece of furniture I'd chosen. Every bit of art I'd bought. The minimalist aesthetic that was mine, not compromised by someone else's preferences. The office where I worked late nights on cases I cared about. The bedroom where I slept soundly without worrying about someone plotting to drain my accounts. My SUV sat in the garage, paid off and well-maintained. My savings account had grown back past 6 figures, then kept growing. My career was exactly where I wanted it. Challenging work, respected colleagues, junior partner on track for senior partner in a few years. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. To hear those warning bells and actually listen instead of explaining them away. To recognize manipulation before it took root. To understand that protecting what I'd built wasn't selfish. It was essential. That morning, drinking coffee in my peaceful home, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach me. Wealth isn't just about money. It's about dignity, boundaries, self-respect, the wisdom to recognize when someone wants to take rather than build, the courage to walk away from people who see you as an opportunity instead of a partner. I kept all of that, protected all of that, built a life that was entirely mine. And somewhere across town, James Harrison was probably getting ready for work, putting on that charcoal Tom Ford suit with burgundy lining, standing a little taller because of it. Something good had come from my worst judgment call. I looked up at the framed photo above my desk. James on his first day of work, proud and confident in exactly where he belonged. Real revenge wasn't about destruction or humiliation or public spectacles. Real revenge was refusing to be the victim someone had planned for me to be. It was protecting what I'd built and moving forward without carrying manipulation as baggage. It was sleeping soundly every night, knowing I'd chosen self-respect over social convenience. It was sitting in my own home, drinking my own coffee, living my own life, completely free from someone who'd seen me as assets to acquire instead of a person to love. That, as it turned out, was the sweetest revenge of all. I finished my coffee, got dressed for work, and left my condo with my head held high. Elias Vance had tried to take everything I'd built. He said I kept it all. Every single piece. And I'd never felt more powerful in my life. If my story of taking back control and finding real vindication resonated with you, go ahead and smash that like button. My favorite part was definitely watching Elias unravel on the sidewalk, seeing Mr. Harrison in that suit. What was your favorite moment in this entire mess? Drop it in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think. And if you want to hear more stories about standing strong and protecting what's yours, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.